Hi, this is Nick here at OnlyFabs, and today I'm bringing you a tier list video on defense reactions. And why? Because defense reactions are really good. First, I just wanted to slap 4 cards at my opponent's head, but there's actually some more to it, because that DPS is no DPS. You actually need to survive, and sometimes having additional options is really good, or having just a bit more information on your opponent than your opponent is really good. And it slaps versus dominate, because dominate can really gank you. So as a recap, on hits can be negated. The classics are the Dorinthia. You can negate the on hit effect of the hero power, or that steel blade supremacy. Blocking other on hit effects from the ranger are really good, and that's when the dominate happens, of course, because playing a defense reaction from arsenal allows you to have an additional card against dominate, so you can actually block for upwards of 8 points of damage on a dominated attack instead of maybe 3-4. And you have more control information than your opponent. The classic example is if Dorinthia attacks with a Dawn Blade and you declare no blocks, and they say, well, no defense reactions, and you can just absorb the 3 damage and see how it goes from there on out. I actually won a game by not triggering reprise effects. If he had buffs or would have gone over my head in the second attack, I would have had more options, but he didn't show them, so it was actually reprise effects. I believe it was a route. No, sorry, I don't know which card he had on hand, but in the post-game evaluation it was clear that I actually won by not defending. So yeah, you have more control, you have options, of course. Choices can allow for making bad choices, but in general defense reactions allow you to process a bit more what your opponent is playing against you. So here's the tier list. As a quick reminder, this is based on our playgroups experience. I've asked a couple of players, tell me what cards you think are really good. Some made the list, some didn't. It's just more a general conversation on defense reactions. So sync below. Reason why this is good is that it can filter a hand. If you get attacked and your next hand is a bad mix of red and blue cards, or well, that's a classic example, or you're trying to really dig for an option, your sync below really can help you. A good example, Dorinthia again. Sometimes you actually do want to have the Iron Song Determination in combination with Steel Blade Supremacy, because that's the hardest attack that's coming out of your deck. Or Viscerai, where you really want to combine Pummel with the specialization, become the Arc Knight. Or is it become the Arc Knight? Now I have to see. So I'm quite distracted now because Arc Knight Ascendancy. So digging for such cards, because they are detrimental to your game plan, is really good, and they allow you to achieve that point. So this is actually maybe even a fundamental piece of your puzzle if you're trying to solve your deck building issues. Being able to filter, digging for that setup is the reason why it's on the top of the list. Actually, it was on most people's first place, so that's it's an important card. Next one that's up on there is Flick Flag. Additionally, I was like, Flick Flag, that's a bad card, it can't even attack. I've stated it multiple times, but I was, oh man, was I wrong. Opened my first couple of packs of WTR and I was like, no, I need all the attacks. Okay, how do you combo? But yeah, Flick Flag is so strong, just because you can block an initial attack, and after that a single attack action blocks for 5, which is single-handedly killing go wide strategies maybe. I know Ira is really strong, and probably for more reasons that I'm now stating right here, but I think that is one of them. And even if you play 2 flick flacks, you can stack them. So a hand that would have well, most likely not have been so much pressure on your opponent, but a single blue card is enough to at least do the Kodachi, which is what Ira is famous for. Playing 2 flick flacks and playing a combo card, that's a total of, well, depending off the colors you're playing, but a blue flick flack coupled with a yellow flick flack blocking for 5, and the next, if you have a combo card, blocks for 7, which is 7? Yeah, 7. Which is all in all really much life gain, damage prevention. If you're ripping red cards from your opponent's deck via this way, you're hampering their ability to actually kill you. And for an IR deck, that's actually the game plan. Don't get killed and just slowly chip away at their life total. So yeah, flick flack definitely was high on everybody's list, and with good reason. So these two are actually, because they also alter alter the way your opponent plays. They're really good because you can pitch them. I didn't state that on the other cards, but you're actually allowed to play them rainbow because they're just that good, especially flick flack. But Reckless Swing and Steel Blade, they pitch early for resources, so you can actually spend them on your red cards. But in the end, they alter the way your opponent plays, because yeah, a player can actually lose on a Kodachi swing instead of win. That one's for you, Marcel. It actually provided the win for our Durantia player. He's watching right now, so I had to make it. I had to make that statement. But it was the win for the Durantia player versus the second place Irish player in Pool B for our current monthly. And he, well, that lesson will stick to him, but it will also warp the way that Marcel will play Durantia players in future events, because once he sees a Steel Blade shunt early, maybe that will make the difference between, okay, I'll go to 1, or no, I have to block this because I need to be above 1 because I saw a Steel Blade shunt and I actually want to Kodachi him to death. So, and same goes for Reckless Swing. And then being able to pitch for blue, of course you can play Steel Blade shunt in other colors, maybe yellow, maybe red, I don't know. Yeah, well, it's also part what's good of the card, and actually that's the one of the reasons why the other one is on this list, and that's Springboard Somersault. It's a generic, it costs 0, but it also pitches for 2, but still blocks for 4, which is what makes this card, in my perspective, one of the better generic. Well, Syncblow, of course, being number 1, and you can make a case for Fate Foreseen, which isn't on this list. But having the option to play this from Arsenal, and actually sometimes you're forced to play it in Arsenal, not so much forced, but what I'm trying to say is that this card actually made me pay closer attention to what I'm playing in Arsenal. There was recently I was a bit bummed out that I didn't draw it against a Viserai player, because he had this at one point this dominated attack with the Arc Knight Ascendancy, and a lot of damage came through, which a Springboard Somersault would have prevented, because I could have blocked with from hand and with the +4. I didn't have the defense reaction in play or in Arsenal. Because I played it earlier, and maybe that's or well, not maybe, I think that's an important lesson as well, that sometimes block a bit more from hand. Yes, your Commander Conqueror or Enlightened Strikes can block, sometimes they have to block, sometimes they don't because you lose on them, but that's another story. It's just important that if your opponent's game plan is to slap you with a really hard dominate attack, keep that defense reaction in your arsenal until you have another one, until you can switch them out. Of course, an IRA deck can do this, other decks can't do this. It depends on what deck you play. All in all, springboard somersault really solid because it costs 0, it pitches for 2, and blocking for 4 is amazing, but sometimes 2 is just enough to prevent that on hit effect. Produce the rune chant with good reason on this list, because it actually, if you play it rainbow in OTK Fizz, it furthers your game plan to the maximum, but it also is a reason to do damage with a defense reaction because of that single rune chant token that is created. Yeah, I made a video earlier with the sound quality being crappy, so this is a recap, and I'm now thinking if I said something important about reduce the rune chant, but the most important is that it furthers your own game plan. I think that you can't underemphasize that, maybe a bit overemphasizing it, and I've mentioned it a couple of times now already, but you gotta have a plan, you gotta execute it, and sometimes you gotta take your time to achieve that plan. And actually reduce the rune chant for Viserai allows you to achieve this plan, because sometimes you need to block, or not sometimes, you actually have to block and wait and sculpt that hand until at one point you can pummel that Archnite Ascendancy and slap over it. And these reduce the rune chants, they actually allow you, especially with the Bloodsheet Skeleton, because they give you the reduction on those cards, to achieve a game state where you're dealing a crippling blow to your opponent, not a crippling crush, a crippling blow to your opponent, because you were allowed the time to get to that game state. So defense reactions, and that's my final advocacy for defense reactions and why they are really good. Until Command & Conquer points at you and you're like, oh, and oh man, I've had a hand against a Naira player in the recent tournament where he was playing the Command & Conquer, and I had a flick flag, a somersault, I believe even 2 flick flags in hand, and was like, okay, this is gonna do a lot of damage to me, and in the end it did. But most important is the hero you play, the cards you pick, should fit your playstyle and match your local meta. So hopefully these cards will give you some incentive or some ideas on what you can play against, what's locally strong against your deck that you play, but also that fits your own playstyle. And most important, have fun, because Flesh and Blood really is fun. Okay, that's this week's video. Talk to you guys next week. Hopefully I got a tier list on Azalea with Sebastian Knetsch. See you.